Okay, so we're continuing on with compound inequalities, although this time we're doing the and not the or. So the and just tells us that we have two endpoints, and the values that make this statement true are all contained within those two endpoints. So in this case, -2, including -2, because it's a closed circle, all the way up through 5, but not including 5, because it's an open circle. And so we can write that specifying that x is greater than -2, greater than or equal to -2, and it must also fall into the condition that x is less than 5, but not including 5. So that's what all of these numbers do. So clearly -6 can't be part of that set because -6 is not greater than -2. And both conditions have to be satisfied in order for the numbers to be part of that solution set. So only the numbers that lie between those two boundaries are part of the solution set. And then, of course, we indicate whether the boundary is part of the solution set by having an open circle or a closed circle. So when we put it in interval notation, we make sure to specify the closed circle with the square bracket and the open circle with the curved bracket or parenthesis. Okay, so we can also take this notation here and we can simplify it a little bit by including all of it in one statement. So we always put the lower number on the left, the least number, which is -2. And since x is greater than or equal to -2, that means -2 is less than or equal to x. Because recognize that all of this dark area here are the values of x, and -2 is less than all of those values. So the lower number always goes on the left, and it's always going to be a less than or equal to. Then your variable is in the middle because as you look at the number line, these are all the values that x can be. So it starts here on the left. All of these values are included for the values of x, and then it ends there at the right at +5. So now to solve these equations, we simply just solve the different inequalities when we have the and. So when the and word is actually specified, we'll solve it just like we had before. We'll solve this side and then that side. We'll figure out what the two endpoints are, and we'll graph it on the line, and then of course finish with the interval notation. Then down here in number 9, you'll notice that we have the situation where the variable is in the center. So it's combined those two inequalities. Instead of writing the and, it has written it out slightly differently. So here we'll solve it a little bit differently, where we solve the inside for both the left side as well as solve it for the right side. Okay, so I'll do number 7 and number 9 for you, and then I'll show you the answers to 8 and 10, and you should be able to work the rest. Okay, so number 7, we just solved the left-hand side by subtracting 3 from both sides. So we have 2x is greater than -12. We're going to divide by 2 to get x by itself. We have x is greater than -6. Okay, so there's one endpoint. And then remember, we're doing an and, so we're going to get the other endpoint. First, we're going to add 2 to both sides. We have 8x is less than 32. We're going to divide by 8 to get x by itself, and we have x is less than 4. So here we have our two endpoints. So x is greater than -6, so it's an open circle. So we're going to put an open circle there, and we know we're going in that direction with it. But let's look at our other endpoint, which is 4. X is less than 4, so we're going to go in that direction. So we're just going to join those two lines, and there's our graph. Now in interval notation, remember an open circle is a parenthesis. Our least value is -6 because we always go least to greatest. Our greatest value is 4, and it's also an open circle, so it gets a curved parenthesis or a curved bracket or a parenthesis. Okay, so now we're going to solve number 9. So with number 9, we have the inside of the inequality, the a minus 1, and it is associated with the -2 as well as the 6. So we could split these apart and make two different equations, and I'll do that real quickly, but we won't have to necessarily split them apart in the future because we can really solve that all together. So we have this situation where we just take the left side with the center, okay? And then we also have the other situation where we have a minus 1 is less than or equal to 6, which is the other side of this inequality. And so now we can solve them individually, but you'll notice in just a minute that we could probably just leave them all together and solve them all at one time, because we're really just doing the same thing to both sides. Oops, excuse me, it's supposed to be 7 there. Okay, so now that we have that taken care of, we have our two endpoints, our lowest value and our highest value. So we'll notice that -1 is less than or equal to a. Okay, so if we put -1 on our number line, we're going to have a closed circle, and that's less than or equal to a. So that means a has to be greater than -1, because -1 is less than or equal to a. On the right-hand side, we have a is less than or equal to 7, so we'll put a closed circle there, and we see that a is less than or equal to 7. So now we can join these two, and there's the graph of it. Okay, so had we done this all at the same time, we simply would have had this equation. We have -2 is less than or equal to a minus 1, which is less than or equal to 6. So we could have simply added 1 on the inside because we're trying to get a by itself, add 1 here, add 1 there, and because no matter what we do to the a, we have to do it all the way across to the entire equation. So we end up with -1 is less than or equal to a, which is less than or equal to 7, which is exactly what we have graphed here. So by keeping it together, it makes it a little bit easier so that you end up with a solution that looks just like your graph. All right, then finally the interval notation, we have to write the interval notation. So it's a closed circle, so we're going to use the square bracket, -1, because -1 is part of the solution set. And then the upper value is 7, and it's also included, so it gets the square bracket. So here's number 8 solved for you. Go ahead and do number 10, and then you can turn the video back on to see if you got the right answer. And here's the solution to number 10. I think you should be able to do the rest on your own, but I'll go ahead and solve them and just quickly show you the answers. So here's the answer to number 11. And then I will show you number 12. There is number 12. And there are all the answers, as we've already worked them out.